President Donald Trump is well known for evoking a reaction from his adversaries. Whether it's what he says or what he does, the reaction is often overwhelming.
Today's latest disrespect by President Trump of our country.
Case in point would be the president's address to a joint session of Congress. Normally the scene of well-measured decorum. This time was different. Protest signs and paddles by Democrat members of Congress were on display, but it was an outburst by Congressman Green of Texas that grabbed the headlines. He shouted at the president and he shook his cane. Representative Green was escorted out of the chambers. Now, the congressman wants to impeach the president. Why? I ask him this week on the Capitol Hill Show.
Thanks for doing this with us.
It's my honor to be with you.
Great to see you as always here. We'll talk about impeachment because that's where I want to focus this. But before we get started, tell me about the president's joint session because I'm looking and I'm thinking, the Congressman Green I know is a total gentleman, and you were miffed that night. Tell me what happened that night.
Well, thank you. Prior to going, I met with my staff right here in this office, as a matter of fact, and I wanted some input from them in terms of whether I should go or not. The vote was split, so I had to make the decision. My decision was to go, but to protest by leaving. And as I was collecting my portable items, my coat and my trusty cane, as I was making my move to depart, the president talked about his mandate, and something hit me. It was done quite spontaneous. It was all spontaneity. I immediately said, "You don't have a mandate to cut Medicaid." My colleagues across the aisle were very loud, and that's being polite. And because he couldn't hear me, I repeated myself, and they raised the volume. And then I mentioned Medicare and Social Security. The officers came over. They were very kind, and they escorted me out. And I have no animus toward any of them, the officers, nor do I have any ill feelings toward the speaker. But I believe it was something that had to be said because we're talking about $880 billion being cut from the committee that has jurisdiction over Medicaid. And so far, I have not been given the assurance that I'm looking for that there won't be some steep cuts into a program that's much needed.
In general, do you worry when you see the DOGE office and all that's going on there? And a lot of it hasn't happened. It's speculation, or they've talked about maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that. But do you worry about those cuts, or are there some things that are just, there's fat in government?
Well, I hear the stories of the fat, and I'm amenable to looking, but I would like for us to have an approach that doesn't require a chainsaw and doesn't give the impression that you're going to come in willy-nilly, arbitrarily, and capriciously to just cut. People have lives, and a lot of these people are doing good work. How do you just decide one day that half of the people need to go and it will be this half? I think that's not a good way to do business. It's an injustice to those persons who are doing a good job, and many people with good jobs were threatened. I protested with the people out at NASA in Houston, and they were very much concerned. They were engineers, people have been on the job many years. They were concerned that they might lose their jobs. I protested with the postal workers. The U.S. Post Office and the Postal Service is not for sale, but there were people who were talking about privatizing the postal services, and I don't think that's an appropriate thing to do. I think we have a service that can be improved upon, but I can't think of anything that can't be improved upon.
You said, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, you said soon you would be filing articles of impeachment against the President of the United States. In order to file articles, there is supposed to be high crimes and misdemeanors. That definition is always mystical, but tell me what you see that meets that criteria for President Trump.
You're right. It is mystical. Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 65 gave us some clues. And these are political issues. You don't appeal them to any court. And while Hamilton was quite eloquent in expressing himself, I think Gerald Ford gave us the best definition. He indicated that it is, and I'm paraphrasing him, whatever Congress says it is, each congressperson has to make a decision. Hamilton reminded us that politics will creep into it, biases will creep into it, but he reminded us that it impacts society. If you're harming society, these are the kinds of things that should be considered great harm to society. Here's my point. This president told us that on day one, he would be a dictator. Some think he was kidding, but I think that his behavior indicates that he has moved into this arena of being what I would call a de facto dictator, ruling with executive orders. And when the Supreme Court of the land says, here's something that you should do, you should facilitate the return of a person that was removed from this country, and it was done by way of a mistake. Facilitate this person's release and make sure that this person gets due process, something that the Constitution requires, Fifth Amendment. That's not asking a lot, especially when you've made a mistake. But to this moment, unless something happened since I came into the office, this has not taken place. And we've had lower court judges to say, you got to do this, that this is the right thing to do. This president does not want to be told that there are things that he can't do once he makes his mind up. And his mind seems to be made up. And he's also talking about doing the same thing with American citizens.
With the immigration issue is one, it's a tough political issue because it appears the gentleman who's being held in El Salvador now does have a troubled past. He was recognized by the court in 2019 as an MS-13 member, but ironically, it was that recognition that kept him in the United States. They said he could be in danger if he goes back, and that's why he was not supposed to be deported. Is that a tough hill to stand on for the public? I understand the constitutional issue, the legal issue, but is that a tough hill to stand on?
Well, not for me. The Constitution that I read doesn't have an exception for M13s or whatever you would call the organization. There's no exception. It says that this is a process that's owed to a person such that that person could say, hey, you have the wrong guy. I'm not the one you want. And every person should have that right, especially given that we know that a mistake can be made because one was made. So it's not for me. For some it is, because they tend to look at the behavior as opposed to the process.
You're holding on to what have not been released yet, but the articles of impeachment. And these literally could be historic papers, what you're holding in your hand. The world hasn't seen them yet. I'm hoping you will slide them to me before we leave. But from a practical standpoint, the Republicans control the House.
Yes.
So the chances of getting a full hearing on this are slim. The Republicans control the Senate, so the chances of getting a conviction are slim. Why is it important to still go ahead with that?
Your camera can't show this, and I'm sorry I didn't tell them about it, but behind me on the wall are the articles of impeachment that I introduced previously. And there are many reasons for doing this. To remove a person from office is but one. Another is to deter a person from continuing with behavior that is unacceptable. If the person is a reasonable person and realizes that this is a possible option that might manifest itself in removal at some point, or that it might hurt members of his party in some point when they're being elected, he may change his mind. And I'm saying he because we happen to be dealing with a male president, but the person may change their mind if you would let them know that there is a possibility. I don't think that you do everything expecting it to come to fruition right away. The Affordable Care Act was something that we worked on for many years, but we brought it across the finish line. Many of the civil rights laws that I benefit from, they were struggled and fought over for years. Some people suffered. John Lewis suffered at the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday. So you don't do things always understanding that it's going to manifest itself then and there. But you do this, you know that you have to. The public doesn't always expect us to win, but they do expect us to always fight. And I'm not talking about fisticuffs, but they expect us to engage and to let people know what the problem is. This is a way of letting people know what the problem is.
The nation of Qatar has said they would like to give a gift to the United States via President Trump of a check, a $400 million Boeing 747, what's referred to as the palace in the sky. It is. I've seen photographs. I have not been on it, but it appears to be beautiful, beautiful aircraft. Is this an appropriate gift? Is it a legal gift? And is it an impeachable gift?
2 points. The first is, it's not enough for things to be right. They must also look right. Even if somehow you can find a means of saying this is an ethical thing to do, it just doesn't look good. It's a really bad look for Air Force One to come from a foreign country, any foreign country, not to pick on the Saudis. But this is Air Force One. This is a symbol of American prowess. I remember seeing it land in Houston, Texas, when President Obama was president, and there was rain falling. And I literally had tears to well in my eyes because I could see the prowess of the United States of America as it took to the ground, and you could see the water from the wheels as it landed. It's just something that is, you can leave you almost speechless. So no, here's what the second point is. Quickly, I'll say it. We've evolved over the years, and there are some who will say that this is maybe the contemporary equivalent of the Trojan horse, a Trojan plane. What's within it? How will you know without taking it apart? Each just the wheels, the nuts, the bolts. By the time you do that, you probably could construct your own 747. I wouldn't want to see us take it, I'll be quite honest. No disrespect to the Saudis, but I think that Air Force One ought to be built by an American company.
You mentioned on the wall behind you, this isn't the first time that you filed for impeachment. Tell me about that first time, and tell me about the thought process that went into that first time.
Well, the first time was probably quite challenging because there were so many people who were just antithetical to the notion, didn't know what it was. There were people who thought that it had to be a statutory crime, and I had to explain all of these things again and again and again. But since that time, the public has gained some additional insight and makes it a lot easier. The first time also was a time when there were people who felt that if you're going to impeach, you have to have a consensus before you do it. You can't build a consensus. So I was about the process of building the consensus that ultimately manifested itself in impeachment of the current president.
Let me zig just for a minute back into the Middle East, and that is I've heard you talk about Gaza and the inhumanity, that the food conditions, everything that goes on there. But you've also been clear, October 7th wasn't okay. It tends to, for whatever reason, when people talk about it, they seem to act as though one or the other is perfectly fine. And so tell me your view of the entire situation there, and is there a way to solve this issue? Hamas is very difficult to work with. Netanyahu is very difficult to work with. Is there a solution?
Well, I think that you've hit the nail on the head, as we say. Neither of them seem to be interested in peace. They both want everything, and I think that peace is going to require some understanding that we may not be at a point where we can have everything that we want, but peace is something that we can have. So Hamas was wrong to do what was done. Israel had a right to defend, but not a right to let it metamorphose into an offense such that you now have months of children without aid, without food. They terminated the electricity. They don't have good water. There's disease. This is not the kind of thing that you would expect from Israel. You should never become that which you despise. I believe Israel would despise what it is doing if it saw another nation doing it.
What should the United States' role be, not only in Gaza, but in all these conflicts around the world? When we see Ukraine and Russia at odds, when we see, Pakistan and India now at odds, how large of a role should we be playing, and who best to make that a reality?
Well, I like to think of the president as the point person for these kinds of actions. But I think the easier thing to tell you is what we shouldn't do as opposed to what we should. We should not call a negotiation what is in fact a surrender with Ukraine. The president has literally indicated that he doesn't know who started this engagement, this war. When we all saw the tanks moving into Ukraine, the president ought to at least be an honest broker when you do these things and not side with the greater power and say that I have brought about peace. Where's my Nobel Peace Prize? You're not going to get it when you do that. And the same thing in Gaza. The president just overlooked the Palestinians completely, talked about making it the equivalent of a resort, Gaza, the equivalent of a resort. No concern about what will happen to the Palestinians other than they'll be well taken care of, but not in Gaza. Well, this is their home. This is what they live for, to have a separate, independent Palestinian state, a sovereign state, and I support this, a sovereign state. I do not support what's happening there now. I do not. Clearly, this is collective punishment. You got all of these people being herded into a small area, and you expect them to exist there. I don't know how. Many of them will just die because of conditions that have been perpetrated upon them by Mr. Netanyahu and his administration.
We talk about conflicts around the world. Let's finish up by talking about conflict right here in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Possibly the number one issue that is expressed as frustration by the American public is that Republicans and Democrats can't get along. They don't seem to get along. And that's my question. Is it like wrestling where the show on CNN or Fox News is that you argue both sides, but that there's still respectful dialogue going on back in the locker room? Or is it really as bad as it seems? Do you have friends on the other side of the aisle that you can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, can we work on this? Or does that not happen anymore?
Well, I do have friends on the other side of the aisle, and we are very polite with each other, but there's not the level of collegiality that I found when I first arrived in Congress, and that was in 2005. That collegiality is not there. The power now is in the hands of the Republicans. There's not a lot of negotiating taking place. There's capitulation, not negotiation. And if you come to me and you say, here's the deal, vote for it, and we'll say that we negotiated a great deal, well, I have to say, no, that's capitulation. Let me have some input, and let's have consideration of that input, and then I would be glad to join you and say, here's what we negotiated. But so far, it's been capitulation, not negotiation.
Any optimism whatsoever that we'll see more cooperation?
Well, I think the American public has the final word on all of this. And they have this every 2 years. They make decisions. I think that people are weary of what you just called to my attention, a lack of negotiation. And I think that hopefully they can see that when we have a president who will tell his own side, all of the people who are on the Republican side of the aisle, when he will tell them that they have to sacrifice principles that they have been espousing since I've known them. There are people who've been talking about how we've got to balance the budget and how we can't cut into certain programs. And now the president has said, well, yes, you do. You have to. I have this big, beautiful idea. It's called a big, beautiful bill. And we're going to put all of these things in it. And you're just going to vote for it. I hope that they can stand their ground. I don't think that they should be pushed into that corner, because it's going to be very difficult for them to come out of it with a victory at the next election.
You said the American people have the final word. You have had the final word. Congressman, thanks very much.
You're kind. One quick look.
Unfit. That'll be the word that I take away. Unfit to defend. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Enjoyed. Thank you.